Okay, today on the workbench we have a Zenith Racetrack radio. It's a model H511. It's in gray. These always look white on camera, but it's actually a very light gray. It's a very pretty color. I always assume they're white just because how they show up on film. Now, this radio has the stereotypical problem we have on these, and that's the dial cord is broken. Every one of these H511s I work on, the dial cord's broken. So right off the bat, we're going to have to tear it apart and fix that. But this is going to need a complete overhaul, both cosmetically and electrically. So the bright work is very pitted, as you can see. And down here, this used to be bright as well. And I'm trying to decide. These were like brass on some of the colors, but this looks to be silver. I don't know if it was or if they just polished the brass off at some point. The cabinet's actually in very nice shape in this radio. It's not broken. It needs a lot of care, but we can clean it up. The decal's gone off the bottom, but the back is falling apart. So the first thing we're going to do on this radio is we're going to pull the back off, clamp it up, and fix it before it gets any worse. Okay, the back is off. And now we're going to gather up as many of these back pieces as we can find, and then we're going to glue these back into place where they went, and then we're going to reinforce them. So you lay them out where the pieces went originally, and then you add glue to these pieces, and then we're going to clamp this all up, but we're going to put some reinforcements in. So the glue I like to use for this is this Elmer's like school glue, and then some of these spring clamps. Now this will probably be a several part process. We're just going to start by gluing these loose pieces in place the best we can, clamping them up and then allowing them to dry, and then we're going to move on to reinforcing them. Okay, so the top pieces are glued and clamped in place. Now, this is going to have to dry for an hour or so before I can move on to clamping on the bottom leg. And then after that, we can move on to doing some reinforcement. So this is a multi-step process, but you can kind of just clamp this up and move on to another thing and then wait for it to dry. Okay, so the back is all glued back together now. What I'm going to do to reinforce this is I have this really heavy duty cardstock, and I'm going to cut out pieces of cardstock and glue them into the back around these edges just to give it a little bit of reinforcement, so that this is a little bit thicker and a little bit stronger, using the same Elmer's glue. All right, so this is the back. It is all repaired. Once it's held in place, it will straighten out. It's been pushed in crooked for so long that it's kind of warped. If you look closely in some of the earlier clips, you may notice we were missing one of these tri-mounts. Well, these tri-mounts hold the radio back in. Well, I went looking through the junk drawers we absorbed about 6 different radios and television stores, and I was digging through the junk drawers, and sure enough, we had one of these exact tri-mounts that came off of one of these radios in there. So now we have all 4 for this radio. Now, the back of this down here. We used that cardstock. We glued it in place. Those are glued and held in place. And then up here, I actually used a little thicker cardboard because if you saw in some of the earlier clips, those were actually pushed completely through. So I wanted to give that extra strength, but it's really sturdy now. And it was all just held in with that Elmer's glue, but it is all repaired. And once the cabinet's all painted and it's all held in place with all 4 tri-mounts, I think it'll look really nice and tidy, and we were able to save it. So I took the speaker out, and there's a little bit of damage to the bottom of the speaker cone. Now I'm going to show you what I do to repair these. It may not be the exact proper way to repair them, but what I do, it works, and I've had a lot of success with it. So I'll show you here in a minute. So here's our speaker, and what I used is I used these Kimtech electronics wipes, and I cut out pieces and I soaked them in Elmer's glue, and I used them on the front and the back to kind of paper mache those broken pieces in place and to keep the speaker cone from cracking more. It may not look exactly beautiful, but it is a strong repair. And it will keep the cone in shape. And this is just an AM tube radio. The speaker's not a super high performance, high fidelity speaker anyways, but this will be a good solid repair. You can use a lot of different stuff for this. You can probably use Kleenex. You can use maybe if you're tight pressed, you could use paper towels. Tissue paper and coffee filters work really well for this. Just don't use toilet paper. I know it might seem obvious, but toilet paper breaks down in water, and you don't want this to break down when it's wet. You want it to form a barrier that kind of holds it all together and not fall apart when it's moist. Okay, I've been trying to clean and polish this Brightwork up the best I can, and there isn't going to be much hope for bringing back a finish on this that's usable, because whatever got on this finish, it's just pitted it too bad. Even I've been using a bunch of different, I tried semi-chrome to start with, that didn't work. I used a chrome polish and that didn't work. Then I even used 4-0, so quad aught steel wool, and even then that didn't work. So I have an idea of what I want to do with this Brightwork, but to try that I need to clean this surface the best I can to begin with. So I still might as well just keep polishing and cleaning, get it as smooth and perfect as possible, and then remove it from the cabinet, and we'll give it a try of what I want to see, how this has come out. I've never done it before, so we'll see if it works. Here's something interesting I just ran into. These legs, these are actually decals. On the last one of these I did, this was an actual piece of plated metal that was stuck to the cabinet, not a decal. So you can see here, these were the holes that mounted the plated metal. So Zenith got cheaper at one point in time and started putting decals instead of plated metal on their cabinet. So I'm going to have to recreate those. I would have rather it had plated metal. Oh well. So just one more thing to make. So here's this piece of Brightwork trim, and this was as tidy as I could make it. The rest of that finish is just gone. So let me see if my idea on this works, and if it does, when I come back I'll explain to you what what I'm going to do. So there we go. I think that's a pretty big improvement. I could have done that in chrome, but instead I went with a gold style plating, so you can see my reflection, and it looks nice. What it is it's gold automotive vinyl, and you just wrap it, and you spend a lot of time and make sure you tuck everything in, and it comes out really nice. I have the chrome stuff as well. I tried using Vivid, but Vivid just works like crap. Doesn't stretch well. I've not had very good luck with the Vivid on the gold. I got some, I don't know what brand this is. It's just some off-brand stuff off of eBay, and it stretches really nice for these projects, and it was very cheap. So I'm going to make my decals for these pieces out of it as well, and we're going to paint the cabinet a different color. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is simple green and a magic eraser on this cabinet. So if you look at this cabinet, it's filthy. There's a lot of dirt, a lot of marks on it. Who knows what that's worn into this finish. I need to get this as clean as possible before I can even begin to start prepping it to paint, because I don't want to paint over years of dirt and grease and other stuff. The other thing I'm going to do is I need to clean out these recessed letters and numbers the best I can, because when I paint it, if there's dirt and stuff in there, it's just going to make it harder for me to back paint those in, fill those in, and paint them when I'm done. So I want these as clean as possible, so when I paint this, that they're as deep and as nice as I can get them, so when I go to do the fill paint, they look as good as they can. So anyways, so I'm going to put it in the sink. I'm going to rinse it off with or spray it down with simple green, let that sit for a few minutes, and then come at it with the magic eraser and some more simple green, and just keep scrubbing it until I think it's done. Okay, so the cabinet is all cleaned from using the simple green, and is a magic eraser. May not look that different, but it actually is much, much cleaner. Now, for body work, the only real imperfections is there's these scratches. We have to sand those back and feather them out and then primer them, otherwise they're going to show through. There's the glue from the labels that has to be cleaned off, and then there's the glue underneath here that has to be cleaned off. The problem is with all of these H511s is if you look at the cabinet, I'm not sure if I can get this on camera, but if you look at the cabinet just right, they're wavy. And when you get these things super glossy, those waves really show up. Doesn't look too bad when you have it just regular bakelite that has the kind of wood grain finish, but when you have it a gloss painted finish, it looks the waves kind of stand out. So I'm going to use a block, a sanding block, and I'm going to sand those flat as best as I can, and try to get that. That's what I've done on the last couple I've done, is just block this out. That way when you get the paint on it, it's nice and flat and true, because the lines of this radio are really pretty, and it just really lets it down if the top's wavy. So anyways, I'll bring you back when I start sanding on this. Okay, so I'm not done sanding, but I stopped for a minute to show you a few things. So if you remember earlier in the video I talked about how these Zenith H511s, the castings had warpage in the case. This is just the way they were right from brand new. There's nothing, it's not heat related, it's just the way the bakelite was formed. So I'm trying to block sand this out, and what I use is I use a firm foam block, and I use 600 wet and dry, a good name brand 3M stuff, because cheap stuff clogs up too fast. I put it under the sink in my kitchen, and I run the tap just a little bit, and I just wet sand it. And you want to get this until everything's pretty much flat. Now, you don't have to take all the paint off, but you want to be able to feel that this is flat. Then I've been working on trying to get the glue off. If you remember, there was a sticker here, a large decal with the model information, and I've been able to get most of the glue off without sanding. What I've used, and this actually did it without damaging the paint, is I used acetone. So if you were just trying to remove the decal, if you have a damaged decal, acetone actually took the decal and the glue off. If you worked a little bit more, you could probably then polish it, and it didn't take any of the finish off. So that worked out pretty good. For sanding, you want to sand back anything that you can. Let me find an area like right here. You see these are, you can just barely feel it. If you can feel the chip with your finger at all, you're going to see it when it's painted. Even if you primer it, unless you block sand that really well, you're going to see it. So you want to feather it so it looks like this. You don't want to be able to feel any of the scratches. So sometimes it's good when you're working on this to take a break, let it dry, and then come with a pencil and go around and circle any of the areas that you need to sand a little bit more, so that way you remember and you can see it, and then you can sand it some more. So I'll bring you back once I get it sanded to the point where it's ready to be primered. Alright, this is pretty much ready for paint. If you see, I've flattened this off. There is almost no ripples left there, and any place where there's a chip, it's been feathered out. Your next step will be wax and grease remover, the whole cabinet. Then we're going to want to take masking tape and go in from the back and mask off all of these openings. First off, we don't want to blow primer all over the inside of the cabinet. It just is sloppy. But second of all, if there's dust and things you haven't gotten completely out, which I'll try to do from the cabinet, when you're priming or painting, if you don't have these masked off, they're just going to blow dust off into your paint. So you always want to mask it off. This is the most important part of your project, is the prep work. If you do the prep work right, the paint will come out awesome. And right now, this radio is right on that verge. You know, if you put the time into it, you make this nice, this may last another 100 years. This may be an heirloom piece that family members pass on. If you just kind of half-ass it and piece it together, you know, it'll probably get tossed out in the next 10 years. So I really make a point of trying to make these things as perfect as possible, and hopefully these stay around for, you know, another 50 years or maybe longer. And here's the radio after it's been primered. So we wiped it down with our wax and grease remover. I don't particularly like Duplicolor. It's just what I had on hand. I'd like a better brand. I do like SEM a lot. This is a good company, so anything they make is good. This is a good primer. This is a high build primer surfacer. So if you're filling in imperfections and chips, that does a really good job. So this radio didn't really need it, but it's what I had on hand, so it's what it got painted. Now I masked everything off and it's painted. It looks really great. You can see there is a couple of cracks on this area right here. I didn't sand off whatever this was back here because if you remember, there's bright work that covers that up. So that's no concern right there. And but everything else on this looks absolutely flawless. Now, the most important thing is you need to wait. Allow this to cure. Don't start working on this and sanding this and painting on it right away. This needs to cure for, I would say, a week. If you're in a hurry, maybe 3 days. But with a primer filler, it's a thick paint, so there's going to be it really needs a long time. If it's cold weather, at least a week to cure, maybe longer. Bring it inside if you can, if it's not too much, if the fumes don't bother you. Otherwise, so I'm going to let this cure, and while this cures over the next few days, I'm going to start work on the chassis, finish everything up on the chassis, get that completely dialed in and perfect. Then when that's done, then we will wet sand this primer and we'll put the finish coat on it, and then it should be just about ready for final assembly. All right, I've been working on these pieces of trim that were originally stickers. On some of these models, they were actually metal brightwork. So I'm cutting out new metal. This is just from a piece of thin tin and some tin snips. Just traced this out with a pencil, and then I cut it out, and then I'm grinding it down a little bit with a grinder, a Dremel, and then I'm going to wrap this in the same gold automotive wrap, so that way at least it has strength instead of just putting a sticker right on the plastic, because you will see these holes if I put a sticker right on the plastic. Anyways, I'll bring you back when I get a little more progress. All right, after much work, mind you, these are just sitting on here, but this is where we're at, and I think they look pretty nice, especially when the cabinet's all painted. They have a nice shine, and those pieces we made fit much nicer and are far sturdier than just the decals that would have been on there originally. So let's start on this chassis, and let's start by doing the thing I hate the most. And the dial cord's broken. They're always broken on this particular model, every one I've had. The cord that was in this is so frail, it just falls apart in your hands, and the spring is long gone. Luckily, I have this cord here, which came out of another H511, and it's complete except for it broke at the very end. The reason why this is important is this gives me the exact length I need for the dial cord, so I don't have to guess. I just cut it to a little bit longer than this and tie my knots, and then I know I have the right length. Riders says that 2.5 turns go there, and then 1 turn around this way, and then the spring goes right here. Spring was missing as well, which is a real bummer. I hate it when the springs are missing. But I have this bag of springs here that I bought on eBay that should work. So I'll put one of those together. And I got this big 100-meter roll of dial cord, and that stuff's really good. So I'll bring you back. Oh, I also lubed the tuning condenser and the shaft. So I'll bring you back once I get this put together. All right, so this is all done. You see there are 2.5 turns on the shaft, and then you can turn the core just fine. The spring's fully tensioned. This is long right now because what I did is once I got the length exactly right where I got the tension I wanted, I used super glue and I drenched the knots in super glue to keep them from moving and coming out. So once that dries completely, then I'll cut this extra length out. But I was just using that extra length to kind of size it and make sure I got the right tension. But that is done. And then to get that spring over the edge, I just use this dental pick. You can buy these on Amazon, a set of like 6 for, you know, $5 or something. Anyways, these are the springs that I bought. I don't know if anybody can get anything off of these markings on the bag. I don't remember the auction. They weren't listed for radios. It's just one of those things I bought, and it turned out to be the right size, and they've worked out pretty good the last few times I've used them. Now, the underside of the radio, I'm just looking at this for the first time. Everything under here looks to be original. You can see this wax capacitor. Looks like the end is blown out there. But nothing looks like it's been worked on. Well, I take that back. That's just kind of dangling there. So, yeah, either that broke. I'm not entirely sure what that... I have to see. I'm not sure exactly where that one went. Anyways, so all those have to be changed, and the electrolytic has to be changed. But at least it looks pretty clean, and doesn't look like it's going to be too big of a challenge. I'm also going to put a new power cord on it. So anyways, also this dial cord, I bought this online on eBay. 100 meters, I think it was like $20. It came from Australia. The guy does radio restoration stuff. I don't know his name, but I've done so many radios with that stuff, and you know, it's much better than buying just a few meters at a time, especially for like $20 for 100 meters. So anyways, all right, I'll be back in a bit. All right, so the chassis is all rebuilt. I tested all the resistors. The only one that we had that was bad was this 68 ohm that was reading about 80. And then these are the 4 wax capacitors we changed out. That's the burned out light bulb. I also changed out the electrolytics, but I didn't take the can out. I just mounted modern a Nichicon and a Rubicon capacitors under the chassis and left the can in place. But it's got all new film capacitors where all the wax ones used to be. I cleaned the volume potentiometer. The last thing I got to do on this is I have to put a new power cord on it, and then we will do the alignment. All right, this is its first power on. I just hooked it up to the Sencor PR57. I changed all the capacitors and the electrolytics, but that's it. Oh, I cleaned the tuning condenser. But it's working. This antenna hookup's a little screwy, and it's going to need an alignment, but it is working. So when I get it aligned and everything hooked up better, it should work a lot nicer.
Weekend
All right, it's working even better now. I cleaned the tuning condenser a little bit. Still needs a little bit more cleaning. And then I was cleaning the tube sockets with contact cleaner and then using a pin straightener. If you don't have one of these, they're really handy to have because all these tube pins were kind of crooked. So this straightens them out and lines them up really nice and just makes things fit together. So if you don't have one, you should pick one up. And then the light bulb was burnt out, so I got a brand new 47 light bulb. So it's just about ready. I have a couple more things. I want to put a new power cord on it, and then we're getting close to doing an alignment. So I replaced this power cord using the factory strain relief. It's all wired into the chassis. Now, I noticed that somebody, instead of taking this light bulb out, they snipped the wires and didn't solder them. They just twisted them together. So I'm going to solder those and heat shrink them. Okay, they're all soldered and heat shrunk, and so they should be fine now. Okay, I'm setting up for my alignment, and hopefully I'll get this all dialed in here in just a moment. So I'm just finishing cleaning up and tidying up this chassis, and it's getting ready to go back into the radio. Okay, the cabinet's all sanded with 600 wet, and then after I was done sanding it, I wiped it down with wax and grease remover. So this is just about ready to take out and paint. All right, well, we were waiting for the radio to dry. These are the knobs, and you can see they're very dirty. So what I need to do is clean these the best I can before I can prep them for paint. Couple ideas. I could put these in the ultrasonic cleaner, probably work pretty good. But what I think I'm going to try to do is try to use like Lysol wipes and just see how much of this I can get off. If I can't get it all off, then I'll put them in the ultrasonic. All right, these knobs are cleaned. Now I'm going to paint them next, and these are kind of tricky to paint, so I made a little jig to help me with that. I'll get it out and I'll show you what it is and how I paint these. Okay, this is my jig. It might look kind of ridiculous, but works really well for painting these knobs. They're just two long cotton swabs just poked out, and then this allows me when I'm painting to get all the sides and underneath of the knobs. It works really well, and they're spaced just far enough you can get to both of them. So here are the knobs after they've been painted and they've had a chance to dry, and they came out really nice. So pretty soon they'll be just going back onto the radio. So the cabinet is dry. I painted this about a week ago and it's been sitting here drying ever since. Now the next thing I'm going to do is paint the infill of these letters in this antique white, and this is acrylic, so it's water-based. What I do is I got these little brushes that are made for nail polish. I dip it into that white, and then I paint on these letters, and I let it get paint gets over painted, and then I take a towel and I drip it in water and I wipe off any of the paint that I don't want, and it just leaves the infilled letters, and it actually comes out really nice. I'll show you here when I'm done. All right, all done. Took me about 20 minutes, but the contrast of the white and the green really looks nice. So there you go. So the Zenith emblem on this radio is very tarnished. So I'm going to clean it up with a little brasso and probably finish it off with a little bit of semi-chrome, just using a blue shop towel, and polish it up as nice as I can. All right, so here is the emblem after. Now, it did not polish up. The plating was just too far gone. It rubbed off when I was trying to polish even easy. So, I used this Rust-Oleum paint primer gold. This stuff works pretty good. I mean, the lids on these are always so deceptive. It shows that super high foil gold finish, but it's never that good. I mean, but it does give you a decent enough finish, especially on these smaller parts. You're really not going to notice it, but I don't know of any other options beyond trying to plate it myself, but for one part, it's not really worth it. All right, the radio is going all back together. We're just on the last steps. I'm just putting a few pieces of trim on and cleaning things up, and it will be finished. All right, it's all together. Democratic Governor Evers, it sounds great. Alignment's all done. This thing just performs wonderfully. And then back here, you can see, I'll get a better video of this when I'm finished, but here's the back. The back turned out really nice. It's very sturdy and solid, and it fits back here again, which is nice. It's not all caved into the radio, but yeah, so that was a big success there. So here's just a little better look at the back of this radio, and like I said, I think it came out really nice. When looking at it, now you would not even know that the back had previously been damaged. All right, so here's the finished result. I'm really pleased with how this came out. It's came a long ways from the radio that we started with, and now it's a perfectly working restored vintage radio, and let's hope that this will live on for a long time. Thank you for watching my videos, and if you're interested in this type of stuff, check out my other videos. I have more restorations, and I have more that will be coming out soon.